Welcome to Retailistic, the official podcast of Coresight Research for June 3rd, 2026. This week, Coresight Research CEO Deborah Weinswig discusses two of the megatrends impacting retail today and their implications for the industry through 2030. But before we hear about Agentic Commerce and GLP-1s from Deborah, here are a few highlights of the exciting research publishing this week on Coresight.com. We have a report on the impact of growing demand for vintage and luxury clothing on the fashion resale market, a preview of planned consumer spending surrounding the upcoming FIFA World Cup matches, a trend report on e-commerce and beauty, an AI playbook for retail executives, and a free report on the growth and size of the Agentic Commerce market. With more on that, here's Deborah.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Retailistic. I wanted to take this opportunity to highlight a recent report that we wrote that may or may not be available by the time this posts because it's still, let's just say, getting prettied up. So the idea was to look at agentic commerce really from a almost strategy perspective and how to in the thought process around scaling. So where's the industry? What are the kind of different arrows that I can put into the quiver, if you will? And then what does the bullseye ultimately look like? And I think the timing was incredibly interesting with some of what Jensen just spoke about from NVIDIA. And this idea that almost the chip companies ended up being kind of the AI factory, and which is something I've always thought you would need ultimately. And I like to think about it in that way. And then having the large language models is kind of the reasoning engines, right? They're kind of doing all the throughput. And then companies like Resolve will be the commerce operating engines or platforms or systems, however you want to look at it. And so it really helped kind of frame up a lot of what we went through in this report, which is incredibly dense. So I'm going to try and just tackle one piece of it, and with a little bit of background to make this worth your time. So one of the biggest challenges we face as an organization was thinking about the true kind of longer term agentic commerce market size. So we had sized it up in like 26, but looking ahead to 2030, I would say that a lot of what we're seeing is progressing faster than what we at Coresight had expected. And as a result, right, this number is probably a little over $1 trillion versus some numbers in the market that are as low as like 300 or 400, and we're just talking US domestically. And so that's a big number. And I think that when you start to look at what can enable that and why, that really starts to help us think differently. And so some of our conversations and some of our consulting projects recently have been focused on demand forecasting, inventory allocation, right? Pricing, promotion. And I think that you've got, at least in our world, I mean, there's always a lot of change, but with GLP-1 as an overlay and right, the number of people who've been on, let's say a prescription or a compound and what that curve is, kind of continuing to grow. So you're talking about 20% of the US population. And we're seeing a huge change in, right, sizing profiles, right? I mean, there have been a lot of conversations about, right, the money that airlines have saved because people weigh less and all kinds of other conversations around this topic. But when we think about it for apparel, footwear, accessories, FMCG, food, drug, mass, they are different problems to solve. So in apparel, footwear, accessories, it's size. For the most part, size and maybe even fabrication. And then for, let's call it non-apparel or non-discretionary, the challenge is people are just eating really differently. And it's not just a quantity, right? There's a huge focus on protein and, many other aspects of the diet and calcium and whatnot. So I think that this, like the whole kind of agentic commerce kind of operating systems combined with this significant change in the consumer preferences, desires, that kind of in lockstep is leading to, I think, more companies thinking about their commerce journey in a new way. And we had this great chart, kind of consumers are embracing GenAI for shopping. And when we surveyed people, 60% of consumers would like to or have already used GenAI to shop. And so if you think about it, right? If you're using an agent on a website, right? You're like, is this periwinkle or lavender, right? What's the color? What's the fabrication? And, if it's, let's call it, if it's 90 nylon and 10 elastane, right? Like these kinds of questions around the garment itself will help you, the consumer, make a better decision and ultimately immediately lead to lower returns. There are many interesting stats in this report, but 29% of consumers are more likely to shop on a website with an AI chatbot. Once again, I personally find that I'm just getting used to having an easier journey, less friction, however you want to kind of think about that. 4% though, people have actually completed a purchase inside of like a large language model, which, considering the amount of work we've done in live streaming, live shopping, live commerce, and where that market has kind of progressed to, I think it's evolving quickly. But the idea that it's 4% makes complete sense to me for better or worse. And I do think that there are three challenges that we face. So trust and control, right? Consumers worry about wrong purchases, privacy, fraud, and loss of control when agents transact autonomously. I mean, who wouldn't be? That's common sense that you would be worried about that. Number two, I think from both the retailer and the consumer perspective, the integration and friction in checkout. So we saw some of the LLMs scale back on instant checkout, indicating friction was higher than expected. We've tested the function in which a number of use cases required human intervention or just didn't work, and true inertia. So users still need time to get used to transactions with AI engines. And some of the questions that we're getting is just kind of like, how does this play out over time? I mean, I think we continue to see this get easier. We continue to see more adoption. And that's why I think we're comfortable with this AI-inspired, agentic, inspired, mediated, orchestrated to be kind of over $1 trillion by the time we get to 2030, which is not that far away at the end of the day. So please read the report. It is a good one. And we hope to see you all very soon. Please reach out with any questions and, of course, any topics that you would like us to cover. Thanks, and we'll try and do more of these kind of quick updates just to make sure that our thoughts are in your hands. Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. And thank you for joining us this week. Coresight Research serves the retail community with timely research on consumer shopping behavior, trends across every retail vertical, financial outlooks for industry leaders, and the latest breakthroughs in retail technology. We also develop and maintain proprietary data resources, conduct technology assessments, provide strategic consulting, facilitate leadership communities, and conduct seminars and conferences. Visit us at coresight.com to learn about all the ways we can support your success. Have a wonderful week.